Hi guys, welcome back to the series of UX videos. In today's video we will carry on with information design, and remember that in our previous video we said that information design is one of the three components that make up the user interface design, for which the other two components are the interaction design and the visual design. So as we carry on with information design, we'll look at information architecture and navigation. Before we dive deeper into this video, let's just first clear out the differences between information architecture and information design. So if you think about information architecture, you can think of it as the abstract, the structure, or the underlying organizational structure of the site's content. So like think of it as the back end that the designers work on, whereas with the information design, it's the finished product, the concrete finished product that the user sees once they start interacting with your system, basically. Now that we know the differences between information architecture and information design, what are some of the benefits of information architecture? First of all, they are more or less similar to the information design, but information architecture reduces the user's cognitive overload, and thereby it limits distraction from main goals. Users are less distracted when they try to achieve the goals that they want to achieve from using your system. So it basically doesn't overload users with too much information, and then that means it makes information easily discoverable. So let's say for example, if you go to a restaurant, you know that the menu is categorized in different categories. So you have starters, you have main meal, you have dessert. So imagine if you were a user or like a customer and you go to a restaurant and you find that the menu is organized in alphabetical order, basically. So it's items that start with A, then B, then C, then D, and so on and so forth. Over time, you won't have it's going to overload your thinking capabilities, and information is not going to be easily discoverable when you try to look for, let's say maybe you're trying to look for I don't know, something that starts with an M, so it's gonna be too much work for you. You're gonna have, let's say maybe it's a restaurant that you don't even know. You're trying to experience a different restaurant. You don't even know the items that they have there. So it's gonna be too much work for you to go through each and every item on the menu to try and see what they have. And these are some of the tools that designers use to define information architecture. So we have navigational structure, sitemaps, and user flows. User flows are actually divided, or there are three components that make up user flows, and we'll try and explain each one of those tools individually. So the navigational structure basically shows how your users will navigate through your website from point A to point B. What exactly is it that they're trying to achieve, and how are they going to navigate through their website to get to that point? For example, let's say your users are trying to get a dress, maybe women's dresses. So they'll land onto your website and then they land onto the home page. Maybe you have a category named women. They click there, and under women you can have dresses, you can have tracksuits, you can have pants, you can have accessories, things like that. And then they click on dresses, and then they can get a whole bunch of dresses under that category. Or if you want to go deeper into it, maybe your users want to find a black formal dress, how they're going to navigate through that. So they'll go under the category of women, then under dresses. Under dresses you can have different categories like formal, informal, semi-formal, and then they'll click on formal, and under formal you can have they can sort in size, in color, in price range, and things like that. It depends on how you want to structure it as the designer and how your users want it. So basically you'd want to show your navigational structure, what you have as a designer, to the end users and ask them if it makes sense, whether they would like it in a different way, if they'd want something changed, and things like that. But mainly just depends on how the users want the navigation to be structured, and then as the designer you can structure it in that way. Moving on to sitemaps. Sitemaps have the same idea as the navigation design, but here you try to visualize, you put everything on paper. Basically the user would be able to comprehend what you're trying to convey. So your website would be divided into main menus. So when your user logs onto the website, they land onto a general home page, and then within that home page there would be other main menus that correspond to it. So let's look at an example. So you have a sitemap there, you land onto the home page. On the home page you can have different main menus. For example, you can have about us, services, products that we offer, and contact details. And maybe your users might come and be like, no, I feel like contacts should be under about us, and then you can basically just move contacts to about us, and then about us as a main menu could have other sub menus. So it's gonna have mission, meeting the team, contact details if that's what your users want, and then services as well can have other sub menus as well. So that's basically how sitemaps work. So you have main menus, and under those main menus you can have other sub menus depending on how you want to structure it for your users. Now let's move on to user flows. User flows is basically, it describes the series of actions that users need to take in order to achieve a goal. So it's basically just a method to communicate the design from the perspective of the user, and you're going to show this to the user, and the user will be able to visualize what you're trying to design. So it's more or less like a prototype. Let's just look at the three different components that make up the user flow. So first of all, we have the task flow, which are the actions needed to achieve a goal, and you have this in words. So let's say, for example, your user wants to what can I say, to buy a black dress, for example. And then your screen flow is just a mock-up of the screens and their flow in the system. So here you have you actually show the screens but in low fidelity, so you can draw them on paper and then show them to your users. With the wireflow is basically just a mock-up of the system and shows the user how exactly the system is going to work and how it's going to look like. So now here with the wireflow, it's of high fidelity, and your users would be able to see exactly how they are going to see the system once it's been designed and developed and they have the finished product. Let's just look at an example that I have. So here's an example of a user flow that we did in class. So the upper top there, you can see the task flow where user goes to earnings page from the navigation bar, and then they see the available amount for instant cash out. Let's say maybe they want to cash out their money, and then they transfer the available amount to their personal bank accounts. And underneath there you can see the wire flow, and underneath there you can see the screen flow. But if you check properly, you can see that they are actually interchangeable. So with the wire flow, it's basically just how we described the screen flow in our previous screen, and the screen flow is how we described the wire flow. So the two can be interchangeable as long as you understand what you're doing, and one has to be in low fidelity, the other one has to be in high fidelity, or you can do both in high fidelity to like make sure that your users actually have a deeper understanding of what you're trying to design. But you can use the two interchangeably, or you can just use one. It merely just depends on you as the designer, as long as your users understand what you're trying to convey. So that brings us to the end of this video. It was pretty lengthy, but I hope it was very useful. Please don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in our next video.